My wife married me for citizenship. She planned to divorce me after 5 years. But instead, I made sure she got deported on our anniversary. For 5 years, I played the perfect husband, loving, supportive, and devoted. I did everything for her. Before we got married, I paid for her apartment, covered her bills when she struggled to find a job, handled all the legal paperwork for her visa, and stood by her through every interview. I vouched for her character, signed every document she needed, and never questioned my commitment to her. And now, here we were, sitting across from each other at our 5-year anniversary dinner. She smiled at me like a woman moments away from hitting the jackpot. She thought this was her victory lap. She thought I was clueless. She was wrong. The waiter poured the wine, and the soft hum of jazz filled the restaurant. Warm candlelight flickered between us. She sighed dramatically, setting down her napkin. "I can't believe it's been 5 years," she said. I took a slow sip of my drink. "Time flies, huh?" She reached across the table, gently squeezing my hand. A perfect display of fake affection, a rehearsed performance. "I just want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me," she said, her voice soft, emotional, too perfect. She was leading up to something, and I already knew what. What she didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment. She believed tonight would finally set her free. But by the time this dinner was over, she would be losing everything. I smiled. "That reminds me," I said, pulling a small envelope from my jacket pocket and placing it on the table. Her eyes lit up with excitement. She thought it was a gift. It was, but not the kind she was expecting. 5 years ago, I was a fool. When I met Isabella, I thought I had won the lottery. She was beautiful, charming, and had this soft, innocent way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world. I fell fast. I was never the type to rush into things, but with her, everything felt right. She had just moved to the country and was struggling to adjust. I wanted to help. She told me how hard it was to find stability, how she just wanted a chance at a better life. So I married her. I didn't question it when she suggested we get legally married quickly, but take our time planning an actual wedding. I didn't think twice when she wanted her own bank account just for emergencies. I didn't notice how she subtly avoided forming deeper connections with my family and friends. Because I was in love. And she was playing the long game. I figured it out 6 months ago. Not because of an overheard conversation. No, Isabella wasn't careless.
She was too smart for that.
She had been planning this for years. But she overlooked one thing: paperwork. The thing about being married to someone for 5 years is that you learn their habits. And one of Isabella's habits? She never handled paperwork herself. She always found an excuse to hand it off to me. "You know I'm terrible with forms, babe," she'd say with a smile. "You're so much better at this. I don't want to mess anything up. Can you double-check it for me?" For years, I thought she was just lazy. But now I knew the truth. She had been avoiding leaving a paper trail. So one day, I went looking. I had never been the type to snoop. Even when I first started feeling like something was off, I ignored it, convinced myself I was overthinking. But that day, I opened the filing cabinet in our home office. Inside, I found an immigration lawyer's business card. I flipped it over. On the back, in her handwriting, were the words, "Final appointment, 5-year mark." My stomach dropped. The 5-year mark. The exact amount of time she needed to stay married to secure permanent residency. This wasn't a coincidence. I kept digging. And what I found next made my blood run cold. Tucked between old medical records and tax forms, I found a printed email. It was from her lawyer. The subject line? "Your options once residency is finalized." The body of the email was a detailed breakdown of how to prepare for a clean divorce after reaching the 5-year requirement. It even included a recommended settlement strategy. But the last paragraph is what made me sick. Once your green card is no longer tied to your spouse, you will have full freedom to proceed with the divorce with minimal complications. Given your husband's financial situation, you may be entitled to significant spousal support if handled correctly. Let me know if you'd like to start preparing the documentation early. She had this plan down to the last dollar. For years, she had smiled in my face, let me love her, let me support her, all while waiting for the day she could leave and take half of everything I owned. I felt physically sick, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because the moment I read that email, I knew exactly what I had to do. She thought she was in control. She thought I was just another clueless husband who wouldn't see it coming. She thought I was going to be her final payout. She was wrong. Because now, I was about to turn her entire plan against her. I didn't confront her. I didn't even let her know I suspected a thing. If I wanted my revenge to work, she needed to believe that I was still the devoted, oblivious husband she had spent 5 years deceiving. So for the next 6 months, I did something I never thought I had the patience for. I played dumb. I still kissed her goodbye in the mornings. I still cooked her favorite meals. I still sat beside her on the couch, listening to her ramble about things that, in hindsight, she never planned to include me in long term. I made her comfortable. I made her believe everything was still going exactly according to her plan. And while she was waiting for the perfect moment to drop the divorce bombshell, I was slowly turning her own game against her. The paper trail. One thing I knew for certain. The U.S. immigration system does not take fraud lightly. And I was about to make sure they saw everything. I went through every piece of documentation I had ever signed for her. The visa application where I swore our marriage was real. The interview forms where she promised we were building a life together. The joint financial records that proved I had fully supported her. And then, I started gathering her mistakes. The lawyer's email was my most powerful weapon. Her hidden financial transfers, where she had been slowly moving our shared money into her personal account, became my second. Screenshots of conversations with her friends, where she joked about how easy it was to manipulate me, sealed the deal. But I wasn't done yet. I needed proof that she was actively planning to leave me once her residency was secured. And that was the easiest part of all. Uncovering the truth. One evening, after she went to bed, I opened my laptop and did something bold. I hired a private investigator. His job was simple: follow her. Document everything. Within a week, I had exactly what I needed. Because guess what? She wasn't just planning to leave me. She already had another life lined up. The investigator discovered that Isabella had been meeting with another man. A man she had apparently been seeing for over a year. A man who, according to the investigator's notes, wasn't just her secret lover, but her future real husband. I was done waiting. I had everything I needed. It was time to spring the trap. And I was going to do it on the night she thought she had won. Our 5-year anniversary. The night that was supposed to mark her victory. She was planning to tell me she was leaving. But instead of walking away with half of everything I owned, she was about to be deported. The restaurant was perfect, high-end, elegant, the kind of place you have to reserve months in advance. Exactly the kind of setting Isabella would want for her grand finale. She had dressed for the occasion, a sleek black dress, delicate gold jewelry. The kind of look that said, I want to be remembered as the classy one when this marriage ends. I played my part flawlessly. I showered her with compliments all evening, acted soft, nostalgic, like a man deeply in love. I let her believe I was still blind. And now the moment had arrived. The waiter had just poured our wine. The candlelight flickered between us. She sighed dramatically, setting down her napkin, looking at me with a carefully rehearsed expression of sorrow. I can't believe it's been 5 years, she said. I took a slow sip of my drink. Time flies, huh? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand gently. A well-practiced gesture. I just want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me, she said, her voice soft, emotional, too perfect. I smiled. That reminds me, I said, pulling a small envelope from my jacket pocket and placing it on the table. Her eyes flickered with excitement. She thought it was a gift. It was just not the kind she was expecting. She slid the envelope toward her, opened it. Inside was a printed copy of her immigration lawyer's email, the exact email that outlined how she planned to leave me the second she secured her permanent residency. Her face drained of color. She blinked, looked at me, looked back at the email. Then she forced a laugh. I don't understand. What is this? I leaned back in my chair. Oh, it's just something I found while going through our documents, I said casually. Thought it was interesting. Her hands clenched around the paper. This must be, there's some kind of mistake. I smiled. Yeah? Keep reading.
She did.
And as her eyes moved down the page, her entire body stiffened. Because at the bottom of that email, I had stapled a second document. Her recent financial transactions. The ones where she had been secretly moving money out of our shared accounts and into her personal savings. She was trapped. Her head snapped up. I can explain. I raised a hand, cutting her off. Don't, I said, my voice cold. I let you lie to me for 5 years. You don't get to lie anymore. She shut up. For the first time since we sat down, she realized she was losing control. The final blow. I reached into my jacket again. This time, I pulled out a second envelope, labeled U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. She froze. I watched her chest rise and fall, her breath shaky. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it, ripped it open. Her eyes scanned the document. And then her face went completely blank. Because this wasn't just a letter. This was a formal notice, a report filed against her for marriage fraud.
Signed. Sealed.
Delivered. And she knew exactly what that meant. Her voice cracked. You went to immigration? I tilted my head. Of course. Turns out falsifying a marriage for citizenship is a federal offense. And when you combine that with financial fraud and attempted spousal exploitation. I shrugged. Let's just say, it doesn't look good for you. She shoved the papers back at me. This won't hold up. You have no proof. I sighed. Oh, Isabella. I reached into my pocket one last time. Pulled out my phone. Press play. Her own voice filled the space between us. He's so naive. 5 years, and then I'm free. He won't see it coming. The lawyer says I can probably get spousal support too. It's hilarious. He actually thinks I love him. The moment my green card comes through, I'm done. Isabella's entire body stiffened. She knew exactly where I got those recordings. She had laughed about her plan too many times. Said too much.
And now?
Now it was all evidence. She had no way out. She grabbed her purse, ready to leave. But before she could even stand, I dropped the final bombshell. By the way, I said, tapping my phone, you might want to check your messages. She hesitated. Then, with shaking hands, she picked up her phone, unlocked it, and that's when she saw it. Her lawyer, her bank, her secret boyfriend. They all had the same message. We need to talk. Because before I walked into this restaurant, I had forwarded every single piece of evidence to them. Her lawyer now knew she had committed marriage fraud. The bank now knew she had been moving stolen money. And the boyfriend? Well, let's just say, I sent him a little highlight reel of her real personality. She looked up at me, eyes wide, lips trembling. You, she whispered.
You ruined me.
I stood, grabbing my coat. No, I said. You ruined yourself. I just made sure you got what you deserved. Then I walked out, left her sitting there, alone, realizing that her life was over. The aftermath. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Deported. It happened faster than I expected. Once the fraud case was filed, immigration moved quickly. They didn't need much convincing. The evidence spoke for itself. A fake marriage, hidden financial transfers, recorded conversations admitting she was using me. Open and shut. I wasn't there the day they came to get her, but I heard about it. A mutual friend told me she completely lost it when they showed up at her door, screaming, crying, begging them to let her stay. She tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding. But when they showed her the legal complaint, the lawyer emails, the proof she had already been preparing to divorce me, she had nothing left to say. They gave her 2 days to pack her things before she was officially removed from the country. And just like that, everything she had worked toward for 5 years vanished. But the best part? Her boyfriend dumped her immediately. See, I had made sure he got all the juicy details. Screenshots of her talking about using him too. A voice recording where she mocked him for being so easy to manipulate. She thought he would take her in after she got deported. She thought she would still land on her feet. Instead, he blocked her, ghosted her, didn't even show up to say goodbye. She had burned every bridge. She had no home, no money, no support system. For 5 years she had played me, lied to me, laughed at me. And now, she had nothing. I got one last message from her before she left. It was short.
Please, just talk to me. I stared at it for a long time.
Then I turned off my phone, deleted the conversation, and walked away. She wasn't my problem anymore. And she never would be again.